In today's video, we're doing a comprehensive review of the best rowers on the market for you. So if you're looking at setting up a rowing machine in your house and you want to get in better shape, this is a great video because we're going to walk through what I've created for you here on screen. So this is a Google Sheet, and we're going to be comparing rowers such as the Concept 2, the Ergatta water rower, the Hydrow, the Nordictrack popular rower, and also the Echelon rowers. And what I've done is I've put a lot of information on this sheet and I've highlighted some of the cells because these are the ones that I thought needed a little bit more clarification as I was starting to do research for myself in purchasing a rower. So before we get to that, if you do want to reference this Google Sheet, it is in the description below. You don't have to opt in or anything, just click the sheet and you'll be able to look through and be able to see everything. I just ask that if you do end up purchasing one of these rowers, I do have affiliate links on the sheet and also in the description below, which helps to support my YouTube channel and all the research that I did for this video. So one of the first things I wanted to highlight here is the Concept 2 rower. And this is a great one to talk about first because you can actually see video of me right here at the local YMCA. This is probably one of the most popular rowers that you're going to see at different gyms because it's a little bit cheaper and more of a standard rower. It's not an interactive, engaging rower. What you can see here is that the two PM4s that they had at the gym were actually both broke. One of them looks like it actually has a little bit of damage to the screen. But they did have a PM5, and that, if you can tell right there, it's in the upper right hand corner. And this gives you an idea of what you're looking at with this specific rower. Not a high-tech machine. It's basically, you know, set your time, set your resistance, and then you can go from there. The resistance on these is typically just air resistance, which you're going to talk about later in this video because there's a lot of different types of resistances that these rowers have. But one of the things that's interesting with theirs is they actually have a split pricing model. And for an extra $150, you can get one for a tall rider. I'm 6'5", and what you can see right now on screen is me on the Concept 2. Plenty of room, no issues there as far as being able to extend my legs. So for 99% of the population, I think all these rowers will be fine as far as extending your legs. The other cell that I had highlighted here is the Echelon one at $9.99. The reason I highlighted that is Echelon actually has several rowers that you can choose, and this is the lowest tier rower. So I wanted you to be aware of that they do have different tiers that you can go up and they get a little bit more complex. And we will be discussing that later in the video as well. Now, as far as membership cost, the Concept 2 is the only one that doesn't have a membership cost. And that's because it's not an interactive rower, right? You're just setting the resistance to a certain level you're getting on it, maybe setting a timer, and that's about it. But you don't have the monthly cost associated with that. So let's skip over other costs because this is mostly just shipping costs that you'll see with the different rowers, and you can take a look at that if you'd like. But the warranty, the one I thought worth mentioning was the Nordictrack. It has a 10-year warranty, 2 years parts and labor or warranty, and then 1 year for labor warranty. Pretty impressive. So if you're somebody who's a little bit nervous when you're buying something, that's definitely something to consider. Now, as far as trial length, the Hydrow rower really sets itself apart from the other rowers. It's more than 12 times more than any of the other rowers because you can see a lot of 30-day trials, no trials, and they give you a free 1-year trial, which is pretty impressive, which tells me that they really stand behind their product and they're confident in it. Footprint specs and seat height, I'll leave this right here for you. Pretty basic. Most of them are the same size. I mean, it's a rower, not a lot to look at here. But why don't we start to, I'm going to kind of scroll over a little bit so we can get more of the content on the screen here. As far as the weight of the rower, I thought it was worth mentioning this one. The Ergatta water rower is 66.5 pounds when there's no water in it, and then you're adding essentially around almost 40 pounds once you put water into the machine. And then as far as the frame materials, it sets itself apart too because it's made of American cherry wood. If you're looking at all the different rowers, just from an aesthetic standpoint, the Ergatta water rower definitely sets itself apart. It's beautiful. The design of it is amazing looking, but it just depends on what you're looking for. Some people don't really care about aesthetics and design, and other people really do. Me personally, not a big deal. I also don't like the idea of using water for the resistance, but I can't say I've actually tried it, but to me, it's just another thing that could create some issues, right? If you have 40 pounds of water, whatever that is, I'll do the research and put it on screen. If that ever came out, you know, you're going to have a pretty big mess in your house. To each their own on that, but that's just my opinion on it. Weight capacity. I thought this was worth mentioning that the Nordictrack is by far the least at 250 pounds. So that may apply for some people, or even if you have somebody else who may end up using the rower in the future. Now, resistance, this one's interesting. So the Concept 2, you know, the one that you're probably familiar with from going to the gyms and stuff like that, is air resistance, which is considered variable resistance because the intensity isn't really determined based on the setting you put it at, but a lot of times it's based on how hard you're rowing. So if you row harder, you get more resistance. You can set the resistance, which you can see here, but it is a variable resistance based on how hard you row. Now with the water rower, not surprisingly, it's water resistance. And then you can see magnetic and then magnetic resistance down here for the Nordictrack and Echelon. And where it gets interesting is with the Hydrow rower. So it has electromagnetic resistance. So I had to look this up because I forget the specific wording on it. And you can see here, it actually has electromagnetic drag mechanism, which means the resistance needs electricity to operate. Now the resistance on a magnetic rower will increase slightly the faster you row, but not as much as an air rower, as we were talking about before, where air rowers are more of a variable resistance. So the reason that that is nice is that the actual mechanisms that create the resistance are not touching to create the resistance, it's actually electricity. So this is really nice because I bought a pretty cheap bike stand for like a bike trainer in the wintertime. And what I found is the more that I used the bike and the more that I applied resistance on it, the more that it is actually wearing out. So if you're worried about any of these devices wearing out, most likely the Hydrow rower is going to last the longest because you don't actually have the physical wear and tear on the resistance mechanism that the others do. So why don't we take a look right here as far as storage. All of them you can stand upright, so they're pretty good with vertical storage. The display is worth mentioning because we mentioned earlier that the Echelon has different tiers. The lowest tier doesn't even have a display on it, so you'd have to, you know, hook up an iPad or your phone to it to get it to work. I do have the Echelon bike. Sometimes I have issues connecting to my iPad via the Bluetooth of the bike, so it is one more thing that could possibly fail, but to others it's not that big of a deal. So this is worth mentioning too with the Echelon rower. If you already have the Echelon bike, the membership fee includes the Echelon rower. So that's just something to consider as far as that goes. And then I also mentioned before that the PM5 does have Bluetooth connectivity, but it doesn't have an interactive training to it. But one of the interesting things is I watched a video on YouTube where they're able to kind of rig up the Concept 2 and make it an interactive rower. The problem with that is the device that you need to be able to do that has been out of stock and hasn't been sold for quite a while. But if you are curious, that video is on the screen right now and you can check that out. And then again, guys, thank you for using my links in the description below to support my YouTube channel, as I am looking to purchase one of these rowers for myself. All right, guys, catch you in that next video, and thanks again for supporting the channel.